Hello, this is Mark Holmes, the editorial director of Via Satellite, and we're doing another of our Thursday morning conversations. And we're going back to California, which is always good. And I'm talking today to Sara Spangelo, who's the CEO and co-founder of Swarm Technologies. So, Sara, welcome. It's lovely to talk to you. I think this is the first conversation we've had, so it's nice for me to talk to somebody new. Tell us a little bit about. I mean, we've all been in lockdown. It feels like a long time, few months now. What's it been like for you there in California?
Yeah, wonderful to participate in this. Thanks for the invite. Honestly, I feel like California, we're very lucky. We have incredible weather here, lots of outdoor activities to do, lots of space. So we've certainly adapted. The first few weeks were obviously tough for everyone, but we've kind of come into this new mode of work and operation. It's kind of the new normal. Yeah. We're very lucky. We have a large 8,000 square foot facility in Mountain View where we build our satellites. We're fully vertically integrated, as well as our devices. So even through lockdown, we were able to maintain kind of a one-man show, building satellites, building devices. And now we've kind of slowly transitioned back to work with all of the precautions. Many people still working from home, and very comfortable doing that. A lot of people have traveled out of state, gone to visit parents or camping or whatever. And that's been kind of nice through the summer months, especially.
So one of these things with these conversations is we like to find out a little bit of, what movies you've been watching, music, TV, dramas, box sets you've been binging on. So any sort of movies that you've really enjoyed watching during lockdown, any dramas, or what sort of caught your eye over this period?
Yeah, probably not so much movies. We've been watching Space Force, which of course is very relevant. There is also a Space Force, so it's kind of interesting to participate in. Been rewatching Silicon Valley, which is again super relevant given the show is almost too close. Like that happened to me 2 years ago, kind of thing. And then outside of that, I've been actually just spending a lot more time outside and a lot of time listening to books. So that's been awesome, like reading more than a book a week or listening to more than a book a week on speed dial. And yeah, so that's been a way to kind of keep busy, but work has still been crazy busy as well. So a lot of time is still focused on that.
And what about in terms of, I mean, you mentioned audio books there, in terms of, what sort of genres or which books have been your sort of favorite that you've been listening to?
Yeah, so all over the spectrum. I'm trying to kind of diversify, not just space books. I think my favorite book so far has been Why We Sleep, which is just a book about sleep, but it's very kind of academic, but also anecdotal, very entertaining, but you learn a lot. Yeah. And at the beginning of lockdown, I was kind of struggling with that and managed to make some changes and have significant improvement in sleep. So it was cool to kind of apply a lot of those methods to my own life. And I think it's very relevant. It's obviously relevant to everybody. I also finished the Meridian book, Eccentric Orbits, which is a crazy adventure. The Amazon book, The Everything Store, is also really interesting to just watch. Early stage startup, kind of the chaos that ensues. And then I think of Amazon as a very successful company. So it's kind of reassuring to know that early on there was a lot of this chaos, which, any startup can associate with. The Disney book, A Ride of a Lifetime, was super interesting to watch. Someone start, doing lighting and stuff, and then all the way up to the CEO of Disney, which is obviously a huge company. So a lot of interesting lessons learned in terms of leadership through that. I'm trying to diversify a little bit. I'm reading a book about memory. I think I need to listen to a book about like meditation or relaxation. Probably some more around like politics and history coming up. But those are some of my favorites so far.
I think you're putting me to shame a little bit. I mean, I sort of read, but I don't get through books that quickly.
It's a lot easier when you listen to them, and I actually listen to them when I'm riding my bike outside or when I'm working or doing things around the house, and I listen to them at like 1.4x speed, so you can get through them a lot quicker.
Are you like listening to any like novels, sort of more of the fiction side of it, or is it more sort of the...
Not yet. Yeah, not yet. If you have any recommendations, I'm certainly open. I think I need to figure out what I read in AP English in like grade 12 and kind of reopen some of those classics. But yeah, not yet. I've been more focused on kind of the learning side of things than.
No, that's really cool. That sleep. Remind me, what was that sleep book that you?
Why we sleep.
Okay, really interesting. I'll
Definitely
check that out. Are you a big music fan?
A little bit more, just relaxation when eating dinner, that sort of thing. So I don't work very well with music. So because I'm spending most of my time working, it's kind of more in the evenings and stuff like that.
Do you have like a favorite artist or band or favorite concert gig that you went to? Look back on and think.
Not really. I like non-twangy country music. I like kind of relaxing piano music, but no like super favorites in that space. I'm pretty easygoing when it comes to music.
I'm gonna, in terms of country music, do you have someone? Can you give me an artist? I mean, who you?
I mean, there's several that I like, so nothing really stands out, I guess.
I mean, one of the interesting parts of these conversations is we talk very much about the work-life balance and how it's sort of changed, more time at home, particularly, if you're CEO of a company. How has the adjustment been for you, sort of, Sara? I mean, obviously none of us could have predicted earlier in the year what was going to happen, and you're an exciting new company. You're looking to do some pretty incredible things, to be fair. Tell us about how the work-life balance has sort of changed for you and how you've adapted.
Yeah, I think for me it hasn't changed significantly, and that's largely because from the moment I wake up until I go to bed, there is swarm stuff, whether it's email, Slack, calls. I think probably the biggest change has actually been more of kind of an integration of like, I can go for a run in the middle of the day now or a bike ride in the early afternoon. Yeah. Whereas when I was in the office every day, I would have not been able to basically leave or would have had like tremendous guilt over that. So I think if anything, I've been able to better kind of like optimize my energy levels. Like when I'm low on energy and I just want to go outside or do something active, I can do that and transition more easily, and then transition easily between meetings. I think though, the number of hours worked is probably the same or higher. I also think the elimination of travel has been very interesting. I used to spend probably, at least one trip a month, if not more, a lot of international travel. So that's also resulted in just more kind of focused time. And I also think that I've had more time to think kind of quietly and strategically. So I actually think it's been probably better or good for me as a leader and for our leadership team. It's also been a bit weird because there's not a lot else to do. So I think we tend to say, oh, I have nowhere to go on Saturday or Sunday, so I'll just like kind of keep working. So I think I have to at least force myself to like plan activities, plan to go outside, plan to do something in nature that takes me a little bit away from work so that I'm refreshed when I get back.
And what about managing teams remotely as well? I mean, that's always a big challenge because
yeah. So I mean, our team has been phenomenal through this transition. We also worked remote. A large portion of us worked remote at least a few days a week previously, and then we have some team members that are permanently remote in Atlanta and DC. So that transition has actually been pretty smooth. It's just been, okay, instead of having 3 or 4 days in the office, you now have 0 or 1 or 2 days in the office. So people were all set up at home. I think we bought like 1 desk chair in the transition. So people had those environments. You certainly have to be more intentional about, what are people working on? Do they understand the priorities? Do they understand where the decisions are coming from? So we've been having more all hands and more kind of just regular check-ins with the team. But overall, it's gone very well with our team. I've been really impressed at everybody's kind of commitment to over communicating and participating in all sorts of online discussions and brainstorming and things like that. So it hasn't been too rough for us.
I mean, you mentioned about, the lack of travel, you traveling once a month and stuff. Has it had, do you believe it's having a strong material impact on your business plan and business model and what you're looking to achieve? I mean, it's a pretty ambitious plan, and and something I think we applaud you. And in terms of, bringing these small satellites and offering something different, how is it going to affect, you think, the overall business?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, there's a lot of different aspects, obviously, to the travel, from regulatory to meeting customers to ground station deployments. And we've been able to transition all of those things to just being remote. So now we send our satellites with teams that quarantine to do integrations. We are able to do most of the regulatory, actually all of the regulatory stuff is online, which actually makes it a bit easier because we don't have to travel to Europe all the time, or Australia or New Zealand. Ground station deployments, we used to have a lot of fun going to Antarctica and the Azores and Hawaii and doing the installs ourselves. But we've been able to just send a box and have who's ever there do the install with, video support type thing. In terms of like the business aspect, I actually think that because we're so early stage, there's been a lot of kind of phone calls, discussions, trying to explain why Swarm is unique and differentiated relative to the competitors in space. And I think that people have been actually more responsive because they're home, they may be bored, they have less meetings, and they are, excited about how to kind of innovate when we all kind of transition back eventually, and where there can be cost savings in their businesses. So our sales team has been super impressed with the response rates and interest of people talking to us. So I think that's all really great and validating towards selling out a big fraction of our network, which of course is our goal. And then, going live later this fall of this year.
And what sort of sectors? You mentioned about the sales team have been busy, and it's always good to hear that. When you're looking at sort of new, verticals, customer sets for your services, I mean, where do you think they might come from?
Yeah, so a variety of different verticals. Some of the most obvious ones are ag tech, maritime, and logistics. So as you probably know, we have very small satellites connecting remote devices at very low cost. And when we look at the verticals where it's most appropriate, we look at places where people want to connect devices. Maybe previously they've been able to afford expensive solutions like Iridium and Orbcomm, or maybe they haven't. So in ag tech, a lot of people have never been able to afford satellite, but will be able to afford satellite at Swarm's price point. Maritime was a really interesting one because the architecture of our system is a store and forward. So even if the satellites are over the ocean where there's no ground stations, they can pick up the data from a tuna fishing buoy or a fishing boat, store that information, and then when they pass over a ground station, downlink it. And there, many of our competitors don't do that system. They're actually bent pipes. You have to be over a ground station if you want to be able to communicate. So that one makes a lot of sense that we can support. And then of course, there's a lot of USG applications, and we've got a lot going on in that sector as well. We do end-to-end encryption, which is a really nice property that the government looks for so that we can maintain security and authenticity and all of those things for government packets moving around.
And what do you see as the balance between sort of government and commercial going forward for Swarm?
Yeah, it's about 50-50, and that's always kind of been our goal. First and foremost, we're deploying this commercial network. Actually, we'll be launching our first commercial satellites in about a month, and then deploying all 150 within the year. So by Q3, Q4 of 2021, we'll have all 150 satellites, global continuous coverage, and focusing on selling the commercial offering. That being said, at the same time, there's tons of government interest. So we already have a few contracts and work going on there. I can't obviously talk about that too much, but there's as much momentum and excitement, if not more, and we're trying to kind of balance those two out as we proceed.
Well, we wouldn't mind if you did, but we respect
maybe
we might not want to. But
maybe in a while, yeah.
But it's obviously a very exciting time. I mean, the technology is amazing. I mean, the size of these satellites and the speed in which you're able to bring them. So, I mean, how's it going to be for you when you're launching all of these satellites in a period where everybody's life has changed, and it's in a normal time, it would be an incredibly ambitious undertaking, but at this time to do it, I imagine it must be. It's slightly crazy. You never could have imagined that you'd be launching these satellites at this sort of time.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few, aspects to unpack probably there. I think actually building and delivering the satellites, like that part is easy because we can do that with like one person because we're such a small team. And I think that differentiates us relative to a lot of the other satellite solutions that are just like, can't build or their building has been slowed down. I think the launching and operating, definitely there's challenges, but I also think that this time and any other kind of emergency situations that we find ourselves in, I find just more and more motivating. People need to know what the health and status is of people, of healthcare, of the locations of assets. So I think more than ever, people are looking for affordable ways to, have more efficient operations and safer operations. So I find it incredibly motivating, even though, of course, there's tremendous challenges with that, of getting deployments out. The good news is also that we deploy globally. So there's some areas in the world where, like New Zealand has done a phenomenal job of kind of controlling the COVID situation. So the people there are back to work and they're very eager to have devices in hand. And other countries are doing much better than the US as well. So they're able to do many of these deployments in early testing.
So where would you like to be at this sort of point next year? I mean, if we're talking again in sort of 12 months, where do you expect Swarm to be?
Yeah, so I'm hopeful that we have all 150 satellites deployed or close to that number, that we are operating globally. And right now we have approval in 10 countries. I hope that we have 25 plus by this time next year, maybe even 30. That we are selling into those 25 or 30 countries, that we have tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of devices on our network, blinking away. I hope that we're returning a lot of value to those customers, whether it's, water monitoring, or it's tracking assets, or it's agriculture sensors, or it's defense applications. And I think there'll be some incredible stories and anecdotes that come out from the network. We learn every week about a new use case, whether it's beehives or tracking scooters or kids or dogs, whales. So, very excited to hear some of those stories and continuing to innovate. So we're constantly iterating on our satellite designs as well as our ground equipment, trying to get it smaller and lower cost. So I hope that we've made significant iterations there as well.
Well, Via Satellite has never done a story on the bee industry, so that could be something.
We have some incredible customers. There's this company called HiveMind in New Zealand that will probably be one of the first, if not the first, on the network, monitoring expensive beehives in New Zealand, which is a very fascinating use case. So we're very excited to be supporting the bees. And with the Swarm logo, swarms of satellites, swarm of space bees.
It's that will stick with me. I mean, I think that's brilliant. I mean, in this industry, I always love hearing these new use cases and companies or organizations that you never imagined.
Yeah.
Satellite services, looking at satellite services. So note to oneself, look to do a bee story next year for this.
Yeah.
With Swarm, plenty of headline opportunities for that one as well. Do you think, I mean, we talk about, small satellites, quicker to launch, new use cases. Are we at a period where we think satellites are going to go like more mainstream? And, it always feels, I mean, I've been in this job, 10, 15 years, and it's always felt like it's at the edge of the networks, very remote. We've talked about mobility for years, aircraft, ships, yachts. Do you think we're going to have a period where we are going to see satellites become much more ingrained in overall networks than what we've seen in the past?
Yeah, so I mean, I think I'll point out that everyone uses GPS. So everyone is already using satellite, the GPS satellites at least. In terms of communications, I do think that, as the price point comes down and the coverage increases, it makes a lot more sense. We've certainly had, questions and conversations around, what would it take to get Swarm devices in cell phones so that we can, or vehicles, so we can literally track assets and people on a global scale. And I think that's absolutely accessible within the next 5 to 10 years. And I think, no one should ever go missing. No vehicle should ever go missing. No aircraft should ever go missing. And I think that Swarm can play a big part of that. I think in terms of being like mainstream, part of the challenge there is that people are largely in cities, and cities largely have cell or terrestrial systems will always be lower cost than satellite unless someone invents something that breaks physics. So in terms of people using it day to day, that's a little bit harder to see unless people are regularly going out of cellular zones, which in the time of COVID, I feel like all of our friends and neighbors are hiking and backpacking and going on these amazing road trips. So maybe that is becoming a little bit more mainstream. But yeah, I think it'll become a bigger part of our lives, over the next few decades, and it'll be very interesting to watch that evolve.
And sort of final couple of questions. I mean, we talked about the first batch of satellites being launched. I mean, how many satellites do you think ultimately Swarm could have? I mean, how?
Yeah, I mean, we could have thousands. I think that there are some trade-offs there of how many do we actually need to provide global coverage, how much spectrum is there that's available in the little LEOs. It's not a lot. And then also being cognizant of orbital debris, collision risks, lifetime concerns. So our initial goal is 150. We have aspirations of doing closer to 300 in potentially different networks as well. So there's been some recent filings, if you read FCC filings in your spare time, which, sorry, I feel like a lot of the reporters I talk to are like, so in this FCC filing, it's very impressive. So we have aspirations of doing larger numbers, and that will, of course, increase the capacity of our network, reduce latency, and then also potentially offer very kind of secure private type networks for a variety of applications. And at our price point, that starts to become very interesting.
So I'm going to end on a fun question, because we started by talking about Space Force, and we've been watching it as well. We're a few episodes in, and what was your favorite moment in Space Force? Where it could be a laugh out loud moment, or something where you thought, oh, that's just not happening. Is there one moment you can point to in Space Force that was memorable, made you really laugh or something?
Yeah, I actually really love the moment where the main character is like on a satellite phone trying to locate his mother or father who had got lost in the community. He's like sitting at a table with a bunch of senators. His daughter is doing something crazy, and I feel like that often where I've just got so much going on with the company. It's like, what's going on regulatory? What's going on with this person? Are we hiring that person? This person is sick. That person is leaving. And, he's just got to do it all. And I love how he's just coordinating it through a satellite phone with a satellite imagery with the Space Force at his command kind of thing. So I think I resonated with that moment in a weird way.
No, that was, I do remember that moment. That was, and you could so imagine that happening. That's the worst.
Yeah, literally my life. And the fact that he was doing it with satellites just made it extra, that extra level of hilarious.
It's been very popular. Yeah, it's been mentioned quite a few times on these TMCs, so it's good. And we actually, did a review of Space Force via satellite. So I think that's the first time we ever did a review of a TV show. So, yeah. So that was fun. So
how high did it rank, or what's the system?
It was, there's two things. Obviously we had a reporter that wrote it, and Vivian, who wrote a really nice review, and and it was one of the top read stories as well. So it sort of showed for us that we had this idea, well, let's do something a bit more fun and entertaining, and the analytics were really good. So maybe we need to do more sort of not there's many series like Space Force, but we need to when there are do reviews of them. So if there's a second season, I might have to write the review for that one. So we will see. Well, Sara, it's been an absolute pleasure today. Really enjoyed talking to you. I think what Swarm's doing is brilliant. We love to see ambitious business plans and breaking new ground really, and not just in terms of the technology, but also the customers that you're looking to do deals with. I think it's fantastic for the industry to, and I applaud you for your team for their innovation. I wish you all the best for the upcoming satellite launches and for the year ahead. I hope everything goes smoothly. I wish for you and your company, all your colleagues, to stay safe. It's been a real pleasure, and look forward to talking and seeing you soon.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate the well wishes. Bye for now.
Thanks, Sara.
Bye, Mark.